So soil testing, is it required for us to know the quality of the soil?
Soil is a living body. We can never say that soil is just a matter.
What are the basic things one needs to keep in mind to prevent our soil?
It's very important. See, basically, we have to completely, worrying about conserving the soil.
So how do you educate about the innovations, be it the traditional farming or the urban farming which is not commercialized yet but in the process of being commercialized?
We have to have a very solid plan to educate different stakeholders involved in this.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಪ್ರಜಾವಾಹಿನಿಗೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ನಾನು ಅರ್ಚನಾ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಲೈಫ್ ಸ್ಟೈಲ್ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ ಡಿಸೆಂಬರ್ 5 ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ಸಾಯಿಲ್ ಡೇ. ಟುಡೇ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಎನ್ ಎಮಿನೆಂಟ್ ಪರ್ಸನಾಲಿಟಿ ಟು ಸ್ಪೀಕ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದ ಸೇಮ್. A person who is proud to say that agriculture is his profession and working for farmers is his passion. A PhD holder in agriculture and 20 plus years of experience in higher education and international cooperation and also natural resource management. He is also a TEDx speaker and a recipient of many prestigious awards, including the honor from ICRISAT for his contributions in reducing poverty, malnutrition and environmental degradation. Currently, the director for Center of Excellence for Farmer Producer Organizations. And today we have Professor Ashok Alur to speak with us and to discuss about how to prevent our soil. Namaskara sir, ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತ.
Thank you. Namaskara.
Soil definitely needs to be valued because it's a finite resource. And today we all know that we are celebrating World Soil Day. But ಅದರ ಪ್ರಾಮುಖ್ಯತೆ ಏನು ಸರ್? What is, why are we celebrating this?
It's a very, interesting occasion for every one of us. Every year, December 5th is celebrated as the World Soil Day. And it has its own importance attached to it. World Soil Day aims at bringing awareness among different stakeholders, basically aiming at farmers, right, starting from farmers to the media. It covers a wide array of stakeholders such as general public, scientists, extension officers, development department, policy makers. All of them have to really look at soil with a similar angle, similar thought process, so that there is a awareness. They are brought at a common level of understanding about the farm. If you look at the challenges that are faced by the soil resources across the globe, it's enormous. And if you look at the most challenging, aspect is producing enough food for the ever-growing population. So for this, we have to keep our soils alive. We have to keep them healthy. And this is possible only through promotion of best practices, creating awareness among different stakeholders, supporting such practices to be promoted across the globe by different governments at different levels, and ensuring that they are implemented in a true spirit and sense. So this is very important. And the United Nations, looking at the challenges faced by the soils, the challenges are different in different countries. Maybe the advanced countries have different challenges, the underdeveloping and developing countries have different challenges. But the fundamental idea is same. We would like to create more awareness among different stakeholders about the soil health, so that our actions towards soil, they are more soil friendly, and we look at soil as a real living body. So that is the basic purpose.
As you rightly said, it's not just the awareness program, but it's everyone's responsibility to take care of our soil for ourselves.
Yeah.
A common man's concern is definitely his nutrition, but not everyone are concerned about the nutrition of the soil. So do you think our health is directly or in any way proportionate to the fertility of the soil? What do you have to say about this?
Very relevant question, Archana. Basically, if you look at the nutrition that we gain or get out of any of the farm produce, has a direct relationship with the nutrition that crop gets from the farm. So directly and indirectly, this health of the soil has its own impact on the quality of food that we produce from the soil. So if you look at the the quality of produce that we are now trying to get from the soil, it depends on how do we nurture and nourish the soil. What sort of nutrient sources that we use in enriching the soil. What type of water, what quality of water we are using to irrigate the soil, and what is the amount of pesticides, fungicides, weedicides that we use in crop production. So they have a direct impact on the quality of food that we get out of agriculture. So it's basically, if we are really bothering about the health of ourselves, we should be always be bothered about the health of the soil. So I should say soil health has a direct relationship with the human health.
Wow. Okay. So soil testing, is it required for us to know the quality of the soil? How do we know the nutritional facts of a soil, what a soil can offer?
Another wonderful question. See, when we go to a doctor, the doctor never touches you and asks you about your health complaints. He will first write a list of tests to be conducted, and then only when you go with the test results, he will look at the test results, talk to you, try to diagnose your problem, and then suggest remedies. In the similar way, soil is a living body. We can never say that soil is just a matter. It's a living body. It hosts several thousands of microorganisms in it. So unless we ensure that the life within the soil is perfect, we will not be able to produce whatever the crops that we are planning to produce from that soil. Hence, it is very essential that every farmer should take up soil testing on a regular basis. For example, at least once in 3 years, one has to test the soil, and based on the reports of the soil testing results, he has to really plan his soil fertility plans for the soil. For example, in case I want to grow one crop and the particular crop takes away nutrients from the soil, for the next crop to be grown in the same field, I need to replenish at least whatever we have taken from the soil. So soil test results will really give you a overview of the soil health, soil parameters, what is the nutrient available in it, are there any deficiencies in the soil, are there any toxicities in the soil. So you will have a overview of the soil health in your hand. So I always recommend farmers to undertake soil testing on a regular basis, at least once in 3 years. So that should be the prerequisite for any successful crop production.
ಭಾಳ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಸರ್. ಬಟ್ ಸಿ 3-4 decades back, if you take the scenario, we only had topsoil erosion issue, the natural calamities or wind or air issue. But today, the chemical components or the pesticides people have been using have been completely merged in the soil. The fertility or the dryness of the soil is also a biggest concern. So ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀರಾ ನೀವು?
See, we have to have a package of good practices. I should say, it is not just undertaking one activity and then improving the soil fertility and productivity. So soil fertility and productivity is unique to different soils. So we cannot generalize this to all the soils. We have variety of soils available in the state of Karnataka, and if you take India, we have diverse groups of soils available. So when we plan a soil fertility or productivity enhancement plan, it should have an integrated approach. For example, you were talking about only the farmers are applying only chemical fertilizers and all that. It is not just the right way of doing it. Any scientist for that matter, whenever we recommend to the farmers, we always say apply sufficient quantity of farm-made manure or the organic sources of manures before you apply the chemical sources. See, what happens is when you continuously apply only the chemical fertilizers, the organic matter content comes down, and this organic matter content is nothing but the food for the microorganisms. These microorganisms actually mediate the process of mineralization or conversion of these nutrients to an available form to the crop. So this entire process gets halted when you don't apply the organic matter. Apart from this, if you really wish to keep the soil live, you have to apply organic matter. It can be organic manure, it can be farmyard manure, green leaf manure, any other form, it can be vermicompost, compost, any of that can be applied. We also had very wonderful practices such as sheep penning. So slowly such practices are disappearing and farmers are trying to completely depend on inorganic fertilizers, which is not a right way of doing it. As far as plant is concerned, plant do not differentiate whether you supply a nutrient from an organic source or an inorganic source. But for us to maintain a proper health of the soil, provide food for the soil microorganisms, we need to apply sufficient quantities of organic manures. So this is very important.
Okay. So with all these components being in hand, what are the basic things one needs to keep in mind to prevent our soil? Like 3 tips if you can give it.
It's very important. See, basically we have to completely, worrying about conserving the soil, especially the top soil. For about 1 to 2 centimeters soil to be formed, it takes 1000 years, more than 1000 years. And we will lose it with one intense shower. If there is an intense rainfall, we will lose the top 1.5 inch of soil. I'm talking to you, I'm saying that 1 to 2 centimeters of soil to be formed, it takes 100 years. So it is the responsibility of every farmer that we are protecting our top soil and we are not losing it at any cost. When we lose the top soil through wind or water erosion, it is not just the loss of the soil. The soil also contains a lot of nutrients in it. We end up in buying and applying nutrients to the soil, and we never hardly bother about calculating the amount of nutrients that we lose in that soil. So it's very important. We are not just losing the top soil. We are also losing the most valuable nutrients to that. So farmers have to protect their soils. See that the top soil is moist. Second, farmers have to practice multiple cropping methods. Polycropping, we call that as polycropping methods. Different crops are mixed and grown together. See, of late we are seeing only monocropping practices, which are not really suitable for the soil health. So this is, if you look back, traditionally our farmers used to take up crop rotation, changing of the crop. It was a very, very common practice which has slowly disappeared, and some of the monocrops like your sugarcane, your paddy, maize, they have occupied that place. So my sincere request to farmers is to rotate the crop, change the crop every season, so that we allow the soil to naturally rejuvenate and enrich itself. This is the second message that I would like to give. And the third and the most important thing is, we should practice integrated methods of nutrient management. Bring in, have a combination, whatever is possible. I don't say that you should apply thousands and thousands tons of quintals of farmyard manure, whatever is possible. Farmers can just recycle their crop residues, apply them back to the soil, make use of the farmyard manure, make use of the compost, vermicompost. You can have green leaf manure produced and incorporated back into the soil. This will enrich your soil. Such practices are to be given importance, not just depending on the chemical fertilizer application. So these are few important steps that farmers should follow, so that they can keep their soil live and they can protect the soil biodiversity. By this, they can really make agriculture a very remunerative profession.
Oh, that's lovely to know. ಇವಾಗ ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ಟ್ರೆಡಿಷನಲ್ ಫಾರ್ಮಿಂಗ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಬಟ್ ಟುಡೇ ದ ಅರ್ಬನ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟೆಡ್ ಫಾರ್ಮಿಂಗ್. ಲಾಕ್ಡೌನ್ ಅಂತ ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಇವಾಗ ಅರ್ಬನ್ ಫಾರ್ಮಿಂಗ್. ಏನಾದರೂ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಗ್ರೀನ್ ಹೌಸ್ ಆದರೂ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಹೈಡ್ರೋಪೋನಿಕ್ಸ್ ಆದರೂ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ಸೊ ಆಲ್ ದೀಸ್ ಪೀಪಲ್, ದ ನ್ಯೂ ಫಾರ್ಮರ್ಸ್, ದ ನ್ಯೂ ಎರಾ ಫಾರ್ಮರ್ಸ್, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸೋ ಮೆನಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ದೇರ್ ರಿಟೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ಲ್ಯಾನ್ ಟು. ಸೊ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಏನು ಹೇಳಕ್ಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟಪಡ್ತೀರಾ?
See, there is nothing wrong in adopting the new innovative methods of farming. They are very precise. For example, if you take the example of hydroponics, hydroponics is such a water efficient method of crop production. Even you don't need soil to be there. So the nutrients are dissolved in water. They are mostly water solving, the, the nutrients are, the nutrients can be dissolved in water and then applied. And this saves about 80 to 85% of water to the farm. And people in the urban areas, they always look for healthy, vegetables and foods. So this is one way of doing it. It requires very limited space. It takes very limited amount of water and very precise application of nutrients. You are not wasting anything. This is one way. They can definitely do it, and we have lot of methods to supply nutrients in a very precise way. We are also talking about greenhouse farming. It is also possible, and even housewives, with a limited space that is available to them, they can produce whatever vegetables required for their family. They can produce them on their rooftops. They can produce even in their balconies. So we have lot of methods to do it. But when I am talking about the commercial way of production, so definitely you need to follow certain methods to do it, and it's possible. Not that it's only the traditional. I am not talking about only the traditional farming. I am talking about the best elements of traditional farming. They can be incorporated into your latest methods. There is a scope, there is a possibility.
So how do you educate about the innovations, be it the traditional farming or the urban farming, which is not commercialized yet but in the process of being commercialized? So how do you address the diverse population here about the innovations in agriculture?
This is a very interesting question. See, we have to have a very solid plan to educate different stakeholders involved in this. My first category of stakeholders are the farmers. Farmers are the institutions. And it is very, very important that the researchers, the scientists, have to understand the requirements of the farmers and design their experiments to address their requirements. And that's how we can have a clear understanding between the farm requirements and the research outputs. It is possible that whatever is the finding of a research program, that straight away goes to the farmers. This is first. The second thing is the farmers look at a lot of scientific advisors, and it is the duty of every scientific advisor to give a proper advice that is suitable. It has no environmental burden. It should not burden with the farmer with a higher cost. It should not bother the use of the natural resources. So all this combination, it is the wisdom of the advisor to give them in a proper tablet. So that's very important. The second important point is basically the policymakers. Whenever there is no friendly, farmer friendly policy, we may design many schemes, many programs, but if they do not incorporate all the components that we are discussing, it will not have much impact on the farm or in the productivity or on the health of the farm. We need to educate the policymakers. They are the most important stakeholders in this entire process. And the third important category of stakeholders is basically the scientists. Scientists have to understand. Many times we end up in doing whatever the research, felt need, research based on felt need. I always say we should look at the actual requirements, actual needs of the farmers, and then design your research program so that we come out with a proper solution to the problems faced by the farmers. So scientists also have to fine-tune their mindset to cater to the needs of the farmers. And another most important category is the general public. General public have a very, very primitive role to play. They have a very pivotal role to play because it is their awareness. For example, we have seen people just throwing all the plastic and waste, everything on the soil, and they think that it gets decomposed, which is not the case. So it is very, very important that we create awareness among the general public they always talk about the health of the soil. They should know what is the impact of deteriorated health, soil health on there. So in that case, they will have more awareness, and they will also follow a very soil health friendly practices in their day-to-day life. And the last and not the least is the media. It is the most important responsibility of the media, whether it's print media or electronic media. They have to really have several programs that benefit the farmers and all other stakeholders that we have been discussing. It is basically, we may be highly educated, but we don't have that particular awareness, that really hampers our action towards the soil. So it is very important that the media really earmarks their time and space and resources to create and generate awareness among all the stakeholders. So they have the most important role to play. So when all these stakeholders are educated, I think we can definitely have a very concerned, efforts towards maintaining soil health.
That's very beautifully refined, and I think we are doing our first step by putting this discussion up and creating that little awareness in people and the things around us, so that somewhere we are the starting point, or may not be a starting point if I would say it as, we are in the process of making a better place.
Yeah.
Sir, innovations are always there, and sometimes do you think language or technology is also a barrier to the rural age groups, which are varied from very old people to the youth who are pursuing farming as their profession?
ನೋಡಿ, ಈಗ ರೈತರಲ್ಲಿ ನಮಗೆ ಈಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಯುವ ರೈತರಿಗೆ ಈ ಭಾಷೆ ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ಒಂದು ಅಡ್ಡಗೋಡೆ ಆಗಲಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೆ ಹಿರಿಯ ರೈತರು, ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನ ವಿದ್ಯಾಭ್ಯಾಸವನ್ನು ಮಾಡದೇ ಇರತಕ್ಕಂಥವರು, ಕೃಷಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ತಮ್ಮನ್ನು ತಾವು ತೊಡಗಿಸಿಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ರೈತರಿರ್ಬೋದು, ರೈತ ಮಹಿಳೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ಸೊ ಅಂಥವರಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಅವರ ಮಾತೃಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತಂತ್ರಜ್ಞಾನವನ್ನು ನೀಡೋದಾಗಲಿ, ಮಾಹಿತಿಯನ್ನು ನೀಡೋದಾಗಲಿ, ಅವರಿಗೆ ತರಬೇತಿಯನ್ನು ನೀಡೋದಾಗಲಿ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಬರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಪರಿಣಾಮ ಅದನ್ನು ಬೇರೆ ಭಾಷೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನೀಡಿದಾಗ ಬರಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನಾವು ರೈತರೊಂದಿಗೆ ವ್ಯವಹರಿಸುವಾಗ ಅವರ ಮಾತೃಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿಯೇ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಪರಿಣಾಮಕಾರಿಯಾಗಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಾವು ತರಬೇತಿಯನ್ನು ನೀಡಬಹುದು, ಅವರ ಸಾಮರ್ಥ್ಯವನ್ನು ವರ್ಧನೆ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕವಾಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ ಮತ್ತು ಅನುಭವದ ಆಧಾರದ ಮೇಲೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ವಿಚಾರ ಕೂಡ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ವಿಜ್ಞಾನಿಗಳಿರಬಹುದು, ಮಾಧ್ಯಮದ ಮಿತ್ರರಿರಬಹುದು, ಅಥವಾ ನೀತಿ ನಿರೂಪಕರಿರಬಹುದು, ರೈತರೊಂದಿಗೆ ವ್ಯವಹರಿಸುವಾಗ ಅಪ್ಪಟ ದೇಶಿ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತನಾಡೋದು ಸೂಕ್ತ ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ನೀವು ಬೇರೆ ಭಾಷೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಿದಾಗ ಅವರು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಮಾತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಅಭಿರುಚಿಯನ್ನು ಕಳೆದುಕೊಳ್ಬಹುದು, ಅಥವಾ ನೀವು ಯಾವ ವಿಚಾರವನ್ನು ಅವರಿಗೆ ಹೇಳಬೇಕಂತಿರೋ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಮನಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಮುಟ್ಟುವ ಹಾಗೆ ಹೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಬಹುಶಃ ಸಾಧ್ಯವೂ ಆಗಲಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನನ್ನ ವಿಚಾರ.
ಭಾಳ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಸರ್. ಡೆಫಿನೆಟಾಗಿ scientists might do 100 researches, but that need to reach the root. The farmers need to understand the innovations, and this is the right way I think one can approach that particular sector. ಹಾಗೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಕೇಳೋಣ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಸರ್. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಫಾರ್ಮರ್ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸರ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ಸ್, ಅದರಿಂದ ಫಾರ್ಮರ್ಸ್ಗೇನಾದರೂ ಯಾವ ಥರ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕೈಯಿಂದ? ಹೌ ಆರ್ ಯು ಎನೇಬ್ಲಿಂಗ್ ದೆಮ್ ಥ್ರೂ ಯುವರ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ಸ್?
ಸೊ the Center of Excellence for Farmer Producer Organizations is a Government of Karnataka initiative. It's a very unique initiative in the entire country. We are supported by the Department of Horticulture, hosted by the University of Horticultural Sciences, Bagalkot. And we are, as I said, it's a unique institution that caters to training and capacity building of the farmers and their institutions. So Farmer Producer Organization is a new concept that's being promoted in India, across India. If you look at the current year budget speech of the Honorable Prime Minister, they have come out with a strategy to promote 10,000 FPOs across the country. And Karnataka is one state which has done a lot of work in promoting and strengthening farmers' institutions in the last 3 to 4 years. So there was a need to have an institution that will cater to the training and capacity building needs, help farmers' institutions to get linked to various actors in supply and market chains, and also guide them in doing agriculture as a business. So this institution was formed, and we are housed in GKVK Bangalore. We are trying to help these FPOs across the state of Karnataka. We have close to 550 FPOs which are functioning in Karnataka. Some more new are being formed, but we basically help them with all their training needs. We train them in different aspects, how farmers have to do agriculture in a business sense. This FPO is basically aims at giving them the business capability. Not just looking at agriculture as a way to earn your livelihood. It is doing agriculture as a business. So we are trying to help
I hope
them.
the whole country implements this so that the farmers need not protest on roads. And this is definitely not only empowering but enabling them to market it, which is the right source of income they need to be.
Definitely, definitely. So the way actually you have touched the fundamental, the reason for what the FPOs have been promoted in the country itself. So the government of India has amended the Companies Act of 1956. They have made a provision for the farmers to incorporate or establish their institutions like any private sector company. They can formulate a company under 1956 Companies Act and do agriculture. And lot of schemes have been given to the farmers institutions across the country. And Karnataka government is one state which has come out with a specific policy in the state. Karnataka FPO policy of 2018 promotes farmers institutions. It has several support mechanisms, several components to promote, enhance and strengthen the capacities of the farmers institutions.
That's wonderful to know, and through you I'm glad many more farmers are going to reach their dreams and goals and experience the commercial aspect of farming and agriculture. In this progressive world, now everybody are positive towards farming, but urban farming has its own challenges and also comes with its own packages of interests. So please throw some light on that, sir.
Wherein the cities are growing day by day. Lot of population is migrating from rural areas to the city. Again, the burden of feeding this increasing population in the city again lies on the farmers. This is one important thing to be considered. And if you look at the place of production and place of consumption, if there is too much of a distance, that also adds to the cost of transportation and other things. So people are looking at promoting urban farming practices. For example, it can be multi-layer crop production practices, hydroponics, aquaponics, aeroponics. We have several methods of urban farming. So why urban farming is becoming more and more important in the current situation is that we would like to produce fresh fruit in and around cities, supply, especially this is very true with the fruits and vegetables, especially vegetables, perishables, vegetables basically. So urban farming really can produce the fresh vegetables required for the entire city, with a limited space, with a limited resources. So the use of resources in this urban farming practices are very, very effective. We are also trying to look at how the housewives can be trained in producing vegetables for their own family. Everybody will have at least 3 by 6 balcony. They can definitely produce the fresh vegetables for their 3 to 4 member size family. So like that, we have different methods of producing fresh vegetables in urban farming practices. If you look at the business opportunity, lot of big companies are now moving towards bigger cities like Bangalore, and they are trying to set up their urban farming units in and around cities, so that they produce fresh vegetables required by the urban population and supply it at their doorsteps. There's a huge potential for such urban farming practices.
So for these people, how would you guide them, like biofortification as you have to speak about? How do they know about the nutritive value, or how they produce the best products they can? In what way your guidance would be for them?
Definitely. See, we are also trying to guide and handhold several startups. Whenever there is a entrepreneurship idea emerging in any person, lot of people from IT sector are coming to us. They are asking us, can you guide us, help us to set up a small, farming unit around Bangalore, So we are there, a lot of technologies are available. Bangalore is a place where we have a lot of institutions that can help and guide them. We can also help them and guide them to do that. So they can certainly make use of the technologies that are available. It is only to fine tune and apply it to their actual situation, nothing more than that. So it is by experience they will learn, and the institutions like ours will support them, and they can really become a farm enterprise. There is a lot of scope. I have seen lot of agriculture startups. There are more than 150 agriculture startups registered in Bangalore, and they would like to take up several aspects, including urban, farming and other aspects. So they are into service sector, they are into production, they are into marketing, they are into processing. Several new ideas are coming up. So it has a huge scope in the current situation.
I hope this information reaches many farmers and many more are empowered through your organization. And thank you so much for the time today you have given and the information you have given us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.